we're probably in the best place in the world for bourbon, but we might also be in the worst place in the world because we have so many right near us, but then at the same time, there are so many people that are looking for it around here that if you're not up early, you're going to miss out.
Hello and welcome to The Mashup. This is your place for all things bourbon talk. As always, we are your hosts, Michael Kinney, Anthony Limperos, and Stephen DeLucia. Hey guys.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Hey, what's going on, fellas?
Anthony, before we get started today, we missed you last week. Michael and I traveled down to Florida and went to a college bowl game, football game. We had a nice time. Down there. We looked around a little bit at the bourbon scene down there. And
how was it? Can you give me any good, how was the game and how was the bourbon scene?
Well, the game turned out great. Cats won, UK won, so that helped. We stopped in a couple places and checked out the bourbon scene. We left one place pretty disappointed, but we left another place pretty enthused. We got to meet a couple people that were into bourbon, and they were excited to meet us, being from Kentucky, seeing our shirts, and so they wanted to talk about it, which was awesome. We got a few free tastes out of it, free pours of picks that they had there at their store. So it was cool. It was fun.
That's awesome. I'll tell you what, I would have rather been with you guys down in Jacksonville. I was up here in Kentucky, and it was pretty darn cold. But
it was so nice down there.
Felt good to feel 80 degrees again. Well, we have a new bottle tonight. We are going to dive into a Weller Special Reserve, the Green Label Weller.
Fantastic. And, well, before we get to tasting here, I'm going to give you some specs about the bottle. And so this is a very well-known bottle. Weller Special Reserve has got an ongoing release, but the bottle that we're drinking tonight is from 2018. It's distilled at Buffalo Trace. It has an ABV of 45%, 90 proof. It's non-age dated, but it's rumored to be between 4 and 7 years old. It's the mash bill as the Buffalo Trace wheated mash bill, and it carries a price of around $25 at retail. Before we get to tasting this, though, I want to go through some quick brand history. The people that are just getting into bourbon, something that I found out pretty early on and has intrigued me ever since, is that one of the most famous names in bourbon, of course, William LaRue Weller and Sons, merged with the Stitzel, A.P. Stitzel Distillery, which we have a classic bourbon distillery called Stitzel Weller. And, of course, the history goes that Julian Pappy Van Winkle worked as a traveling salesman for the Stitzel Weller Distillery. And so this bourbon that we're drinking, although it's the entry-level wheated bourbon from Buffalo Trace, actually is the same mash bill that is used in Van Winkle products. Of course, as it all being now distilled at Buffalo Trace, it's all coming from the same lineage. But it's pretty fun when you find out the history and know that even though a lot of people have strong opinions about this bourbon, it does carry a long history and one that's very storied. And of course, in today's bourbon market, anything that has the name Van Winkle anywhere close to it ends up being something that everyone is chasing after.
We've had this before, and even now, like you said, I got this bottle back in 2018. So now it's been 2.5, 3 years since I've had this bottle. It's a big boy, and we've been trying other things, so it's still not finished, but we're getting close. When you go into a store, I mean, you still look for a Weller in a way, on the shelf or on a table. So like you said, there's still a lot of attraction towards just the name. And if you see it, I mean, you almost have to buy it.
I agree 100%. And I mean,
everybody loves the Wellers.
What's that?
Everybody loves the Wellers. They always got to put the S on the end, too.
That's true. There's no S.
There's no S, but everybody on the social media always loves to put the S, much to the dismay of everyone else on social media.
And let's just talk real quick about this bottle. I mean, I've been talking about it, but there are screw tops and then there are screw tops. And this might be the cheapest screw top I've ever seen. Like, I feel like you can just squeeze that thing and it's just you'll never get it back on the bottle. Like, it's just crazy to think that such a sought after name has such a cheap top,
You think it could just be because it's the 1.75 liter instead of the
but
small?
Even the 750s have those. The Fists do.
Yeah.
And it's weird that and this one and the Weller 12 has never gone away from the screw top. The OWA now has a cork, and so does all the other ones, the fancier ones now. But I don't know, just cheap. But if you can find it, it's
prior to that cap has actually been very controversial. So I'm glad you brought it up. There's been a lot of stories of people ruining their Weller caps over the years because they're basically, if you take it off, it's pretty cheap foil cap.
Right.
And I don't know. I've never ruined one, but I'm sure if I ever did, I would probably have to pour the bourbon into decanter, figure out some way to close the top of that thing up. So that's a good point.
Yeah, I've got one at home that I got the Weller in the mail, and the screw top kind of came off, in the mail, and so it just like spins now. It doesn't even, so it was kind of nothing came out of it. I didn't lose any of it, but I also can't. It's also not sealed, so it's one of those things.
I'm sorry. Did you say you got the bourbon in the mail? I mean, is that a thing?
That might be a thing. I don't. I've heard that there are groups on Facebook that you can do that. So
Anthony, you said you had. Do you have a decanter? Do you use one?
I have never really done that. To tell you the truth, I don't have, since all this COVID stuff started and everything else. I guess if I really had an event where I was going to plan on drinking a whole bottle, I might decant it. But past wine, I've never been big on decanting whiskey. I'm actually just trying to enjoy it as much as I can, and so I feel like I've poured in a decanter, I might be gone in a night, and then I'm not feeling good about it the next day.
Is there ever more of an old man move than a decanter, though? Like, that's an old man flex right there. When you got your decanter sitting on your counter, with the, I don't know. If I had to do that for every open bottle I had, we'd have 600 decanters.
That's why I brought it up, because we try so many. And I feel like if I pour one in a decanter, it may sit there for a year. Mm-hmm. And because I'm all over the place, trying this bottle, that bottle, going, out, trying other people's, and I might forget what's actually in there.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I feel like I'd have to stick some masking tape on it with a label or something,
That's going to kind of ruin the crystal decanter if you duct tape it with the Sharpie.
I'm probably not using a crystal decanter. My decanter would probably be an old empty bottle that I ripped the label off of, I guess.
Mine would be a coffee can. Do they still have coffee cans? Do those exist? I don't think so.
We've poured our first pour. It's got a very nice color. Yeah, it's very golden. So this is a 2018 bottle. I've heard from people that there's a lot of worry that bourbon has an expiration date. And most think you have to drink it within a year. But that does not seem to be the case at all.
I guess we'll be able to tell when we sip this one tonight. I mean, I'm not afraid to admit it, but I don't know if there's bourbon that I've drank more than this bourbon. I think that going back a couple of years, so I should know what it tastes like by now. But it doesn't smell as great, looks great. I've never had any bourbon personally spoil on me, but there is a lot of internet chatter about whether or not a whiskey can spoil within a certain amount of time. I think we're talking, and you guys said maybe people were writing that it could be a year, maybe longer, that people are saying you need to consume the whiskey. Of course, oxygen can get in there, changes the flavors a little bit, but I've never really found it to change the flavor a whole bunch, but I guess we'll find out tonight, right?
No, I mean, right off the bat, the nose as your standard caramel, vanilla, huge honey notes.
Oh, yeah.
It's a weeder.
Yeah, it's definitely a weeder. Great floral.
Yeah, the floral sort of hits in the back of when you're smelling, you can pick up those big honey and vanilla. The floral sort of toward the back. Get a little ethanol in the, very, very back.
Yeah, just at the end, like you said.
That's probably what I get, and this sounds funny, but when I first tried it, kind of had like a shaving cream kind of smell to it, which I'm assuming is probably alcohol in it. But
Oh, does Weller make a shaving cream?
if you could foam that thing up right there, I'd probably be able to get this beard off my face right here. I'd shave a lot more often if it tasted like Weller.
Maybe a line of aftershave.
Oh, that'd be good.
I mean, if you're gonna have a decanter, old man, you need some aftershave.
If I have a decanter, it's going to have scotch in it, and it'll have 6 inches of dust on top of that. So,
Are we ready to taste here?
Let's go. I'm getting some seasoned wood out of that.
Very mellow oak, I would say.
not a lot of finish, I don't think.
I was going to say, is there a finish?
I'm getting a little hug. It's not much.
So I will tell you, gentlemen, I think the reason why a lot of people chase this and a lot of people make fun of it at the same time is because it is a dangerously smooth sipping bourbon. I don't know how you guys feel, but sometimes when I haven't had this in a while, and I haven't had it in quite a while, and I revisit it, it's definitely one of those where I'm like, got your classic flavors, you got some vanilla, some caramel. Definitely the honey goes from the nose back to the palate. As much as people want to say things about chasing Wellers, I think that's why people chase this, because this is approachable, I would say, for your entry-level drinker and still enjoyable for everyone else.
I think it's a solid middle ground thing. You know what I mean? Like, if you have something a little less desirable or cheaper, I guess you would say, and then you have this, you're like, oh man, this is really good. However, don't ever go anything better than this in the same night you have that, or you'll never go back to this. You know, it's kind of one of those things where, you know, this is really good, but it's a great way to end your night, because if you try to go one step higher, you're going to realize that this one doesn't fall in that category. You know, so
it stays in its lane as a good, you know, mid to low $20 bottle.
Yeah, that's definitely a good assessment, I would say.
Oh, and it's just a great price. Yeah, like 20, it's such a good price. I mean, even if they have it jacked up to $35 or $40, that's still, compared to what a lot of these bourbons are today, like, it's, to me, I think that's incredible that they can keep that at that price.
I remember I was waiting in line at Total Wine one morning a couple years back, and I missed all the good stuff. And when I went in there, they said, you know, we still got special reserve. I said, sure, I'll take a bottle of that. I think it was $18 at Total Wine.
Yeah, that's about right, yeah.
And so even though I was mad that I had wasted about an hour out of my morning, I was like, well, I'll take a bottle of special reserve for $18. Who would pass that up?
No, I mean,
I will never, if I see it, I will never pass it up. If it's at a reasonable price, I guess.
If we go into a store and we see a Buffalo Trace or the Weller Special Reserve, I mean, we're going to grab the Weller, I would say. Because they're not going to have it on the shelf all the time. In our area, we see plenty of Buffalo Trace on the shelf.
Agree.
Yeah, we gosh, I'll tell you what, I'm kind of mad at my home state here. You know, I'm an Ohio boy, born and raised, and you know, when you go up to Ohio, they just have so much Weller Special Reserve and the old Weller 107 OWA, and it's crazy how much they have up there. And then down here in Kentucky, I mean, most stores you might see it once or twice a month, usually just once on the allocation, and it goes quick when it's out there.
And on that note, when we were in Jacksonville this past week, and we were talking to the guy that at one of the stores that we were at, we asked about Weller, and he's like, no. He's like, the ABC stores, which are ABC Fine Wine and Spirits, are like privately owned stores in Florida. They have some kind of gentleman's agreement or contract with Weller, and they are the only place in Florida where you can get Weller. And so
they lucked into this deal. Apparently they made this deal almost 30 years ago. And who knew, obviously, that it will become one of the most sought after brands, and they have a monopoly basically on it. Not only a monopoly, but you have to be a paid member, to even have the ability, to have the option of purchasing it.
Yeah, from what I understand, you might be able to get a special reserve, walk in and get a special reserve, but anything higher than that in the Weller lineup, you have to be spending the bucks at their store to get into their vault, they call it, and that's where you're going to get the other things. So
That's insane. And then I'm sure you guys have seen the pictures on social media of Texas, right? So Texas seems to have Special Reserve and Weller 12 just lined up everywhere.
Oh, that picture, that in Arizona, they seem to have it oozing out of stores.
Yeah. I think like that's the push, though, is because in certain marketplaces where either they've made these agreements, like you guys mentioned, the one in Florida, or others, I think that's where a lot of this bourbon's going, and it's also going to markets where it doesn't have the kind of saturation that it would otherwise.
they have started putting it out. I've seen online at the distillery now, at the gift shop at Buffalo Trace.
That's not something that's always happened. And
No, that's just like in the last couple of months. That probably has something to do with COVID. I think a lot of their allocations and stuff like that are just kind of skewed right now, with restaurants and bars being shut down or at least on limited capacity. I think that probably has affected how some bottles have gone out, I would think. But
oh, definitely. So what do you guys think about this in terms of would you be, well, I don't know, Stephen, what do you think? Would this be one that you're buying, passing on, trying?
Definitely a purchase. You got to buy this just for the name alone. Just with their entry level product, the Special Reserve, it's great to drink by itself and just to have around. If you're collecting it, you want to have Weller in your collection. So,
well, like the traders before us, I too am a trader, in that I will see, when I see this bottle, I will buy it for myself, but also just to have a couple extra on hand, because there's always somebody that's wanting it, and if you can find somebody that's willing to give you maybe something that you want, or something that you're looking for because they're looking for this, this is always a good bottle to have for some trade value. I don't want to be the guy sucking it all up at the stores, but I don't care. I'll grab it, and every time I see it. So especially at a decent price, $25 or so.
You know what's interesting about this? So I have a really hard time with this because this is a bourbon that I have literally been buying every single time I see it since about 2013. And lo and behold, when it came to actually getting together tonight to taste this, I didn't have a bottle of it, which was the craziest thing. And so I thought to myself, how did that happen? And I think it's kind of the reason why what Michael said. I had a couple that I probably bartered with a little bit, traded here and there. But then the other thing is I stopped buying it because it's one of those bourbons that I would entertain with, right? So if you want something nice to entertain with, but you want people to, obviously not be coming over and drinking your top shelf every single time they're over, then I would have the Weller. And since with COVID, I'm not doing a whole lot of entertaining, and so I stopped buying it, and now I'm kind of thinking I need to pick back up on that, right? I was kind of embarrassed that I didn't have a bottle on my shelf for us to taste. So I think I would definitely buy, but I think there's also a reason why maybe over the years now I've been drinking it quite a long time that I've passed a little bit more recently than I normally would. And I think it's just because of what you said earlier on, which is that fatigue, right? You get a little bit of fatigue, or if you drink it against something else, you're like, oh, what am I going to drink that for again? You kind of forget. But this has been very pleasant. I think that I'm going to be back on the buy train after tonight.
it also makes it great just to have it around. If you need to give a gift.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not that expensive. And I think it can make a big impression with someone. They see it, nice, oh, I got a Weller bottle.
Yeah. And if you look at the presentation, look at the story they have on the back of the bottle. I mean, it's way better than that. It does more justice to the whiskey than I could when I was talking about it. But they, mentioned the whole history of Weller and Sons and Sitzel Weller and Van Winkle, and so that's always going to be something that's attractive to anybody that's getting this bottle.
And I'm glad to have a lot of it around now, so that I'm sure the day will come where my wife will grab it and use it in her cooking or her baking, and I'd rather have her do that with this than maybe something a little bit better, right? Because my wife doesn't know. She's just going to go, oh, the recipe called for bourbon, so I just threw some bourbon in there. Oh, great. You threw a $40 pour in there.
always some poor guy around the holidays loses the Van Winkle or something to his wife who's cooking some cookies or cake or something.
Oh, gosh.
So might as well have the Weller around for that, right?
Might as well. Well, I think seriously though, probably, and they do a good job on their bottle of talking about how they call themselves the original. I think they call it the original weeded bourbon. And I don't think I knew anything about what weeded was, before Weller. I had Maker's Mark, but I didn't realize that was a weeded bourbon. And then once you start learning a little bit about Weller and liking Weller, then you start to realize I think it helps kind of refine your what you like in a bourbon. Whether you like the spicy with the high rye content, or you like the weeded that's a little bit sweeter. So I think that's kind of cool that they put that on there, because that kind of makes them stand out, I guess.
Yeah, it does, and it's not without a slight bit of controversy because I've read a lot of nice articles over the years about who really was the first weeded bourbon, and what does it mean to actually be weeded bourbon and so forth. So that's definitely something that is notable about this one versus others.
Well, then you can start looking them up, and start realizing, okay, well, if I like this one, but it's hard to get the Weller, but I liked it, so I think I like the weeded bourbons. Then you can start looking at, okay, well, Maker's Mark is a weeded bourbon, or Larceny is a weeded bourbon, and so you can start to, maybe figure out what you like and what you can get in your area too, that's for about the same price and a little bit more available. So
another one, we'll have to drink that one night, but I was going to say, I was listening to some thing with Buffalo Trace recently, and they were talking about how a lot of their mash bills and a lot of their different flavor profiles come from where barrels are stored in the warehouse, not like they take all the Weller and put it one place, or the E.H. Taylor or the Blantons or whatever. But I do remember visiting Buffalo Trace when it was one of the first distilleries I went to when I first got to Kentucky, and this smell that you have, this nose on the Weller, very much smells like the warehouse that I was in. And I went there with my aunt and uncle, and my uncle was kind of a funny guy, so he was trying to find any of the liquid seeping from the barrel so he could try to taste it. So they wouldn't want my uncle around during the COVID times because he was licking barrels and stuff. It was kind of embarrassing.
I was gonna say, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to picture this guy walking through there, trying to sticking his tongue out, hoping something's dripping from a barrel.
It sounds like a kid in a candy shop.
Yeah, or watching. We used to have a cat that drank. We used to have a cat that drank from the sink, and that's kind of what I'm picturing here. Is this cat that's waiting for the drops of water to come from the sink, and maybe we should, in hindsight, maybe we should have put some water in his bowl, and that would have been better for him. But just like that with your uncle, maybe you should have just bought him a bottle, and he wouldn't have had to do that. But
maybe, hey, I think he still would have done it anyway. He saw stuff seeping out of the barrels, and he said he wanted to try it. So he was trying anything he could to get any kind of that flavor. Because I'll tell you what, when you walk in one of those rick houses, the Buffalo Trace, the smell is just phenomenal, and you get a lot of those same on the nose of this Weller. It's always reminded me of that. That's why I've always been fond of it.
And I guess a lot of people probably
bottle it up.
Yeah, Weller is like the the closest thing to Pappy some of these people are going to get, and so they always think that this is the, I don't know, maybe I've heard this somewhere, but this is Weller is always the reject Pappy and the stuff that just didn't make the cut. And I don't know if that's true or not, but it reminds me of going to the Anheuser-Busch factory or plant. I went on a tour there one time.
Was that in St. Louis?
In St. Louis, and a friend of mine and myself were up there, and we went on it, and they were showing us everything, and the big open floor where everything's produced, and then there's the floor is wet, and there's water on the floor and all that kind of stuff. And so as we're touring it, they're talking about this is where Budweiser's, all this is where Budweiser's produced and all that stuff, and the floor is wet, and a guy behind me in the tour goes, and all that's on the floor, that's the Natty Light, right? And so So it's kind of like the reject stuff, and so that's kind of what I was thinking here with the Weller. When people say this is like the rejected Pappies, and I don't know if that's true or not, but it's a good story. So
fantastic story, and I mean, hey, there's no denying it's the same mash bill, and that's just that's what it is. It all comes from the same place. I mean, prior to a certain time period, with Van Winkle's having a lot of tanked juice that's now since run out. Everybody always wanted the old stuff, but now it's all coming from the same place. So it might be rejected. It might be, they might set them aside in different places, but it's definitely a good story. Definitely something I want to have more of.
As I watch Steven pouring another glass of this big boy here, I can't help but think these handles are huge, and it is a workout to get this thing up onto lift it up to pour another glass here. But
they do not make it convenient. I mean, it is an awkward.
I mean, you call them handles for a reason, right? And these don't even
lacking
and they don't even have a handle. Give me a handle on it, right?
They got that nice pourer on top though to help you out.
It's got the strainer at the top or whatever that thing is.
Yeah, like plastic things up there. There you go. That's all. That'll help you out. But
that's I don't know. Maybe Weller's the closest thing I'll ever get to Pappy, but
no, it isn't.
Come on, we're just regular guys. I don't have anything like that. We're not getting paid by them. We're not getting sent.
I'm gonna arrange something where we can maybe get our hands on one of those bottles and do a tasting one time.
Maybe that'd be fun. Or we can do like Steven did a couple years ago and schmooze some people at a bar who were celebrating a big event, and they were already half drunk, and they were buying Pappy, and he somehow managed to get a taste of theirs when they poured it from the bar. So
that's amazing. Where was I at again? I need to be there.
Oh, man. This bar, it was in Covington, which is just outside of Cincinnati. Do you remember the name of it?
I think it was the Old Kentucky Bourbon Bar or something, wasn't it?
It was.
I think that's what the name of it was.
It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. I mean, they had so much bourbon. So much. And,
I think I know what you're talking about.
It was... It's right there by the river.
Yeah, it's in the main Strauss Village. There's a Goodfellas right there, and pizza, and but yeah, that was impressive. It was impressive even for us living in a place where we have impressive collections at almost every restaurant and bar.
And they were not expensive. They were not outrageous. They had daily flights on the menu. They had cocktails on there and standard prices. Every shelf was 2 to 3 bottles deep per shelf.
Yeah.
And they had it separated, wheated and rye. It was a great experience.
And the bartender told us they take bets on how long they can go in their shifts before somebody asks them about Pappy, and he said none of them have ever gone more than like 30 minutes.
Oh, man.
But it does remind me of how lucky we are to be where we are, and all the selection that we have at some of these bars and restaurants, especially here in Lexington. I look on these Facebook pages seriously, and at these bars, and they're looking and they're bragging about the menu, the selection, and all that kind of stuff. And I just want to reply and be like, oh, a selection like that here in Kentucky, we call that Applebee's, and that's kind of the way it is. But
we actually learned a lot going to Jacksonville.
Shout out to Riverside Wine and Spirits.
But they had a great selection for what we saw, but as far as the variant of under one label, a standard liquor store in town, they just couldn't compete. And I'm guessing their goal was they had a lot of Wyoming bourbon, a lot of stuff from out west.
And they had a local distillery that did they finish their bottles or finish their whiskey in Weller barrels? What was the story behind that? Do you remember that? Do you remember that bottle?
I do remember the bottle.
We were talking about it.
I don't remember.
We'll have to get them on a podcast and let them talk about it a little bit, because I'm sure that they would like to. They love talking about it. So,
and they love giving samples.
But it was fun. It was fun, just kind of
being in a different town, talking bourbon, not seeing what they get and what else they get, because they probably get stuff we don't get just because of. I think most of the stores around here like to be Kentucky proud in a way and get local state stuff.
I would say we're probably in the best place in the world for bourbon, but we might also be in the worst place in the world because we have so many right near us, but then at the same time there are so many people that are looking for it around here that if you're not up early, you're you're going to miss out. So
the Weller line only got more recognition this year by the Goose Island Bourbon County Stout. They aged to one of their premiums in Weller 12 barrels, I believe, or Weller barrels, but they aged it for 2 years or something like that. And so that name recognition is just going to keep going through the roof with things like that, collaborations. Like you were saying, that store has ones that they were, possibly aging stuff in Weller barrels and stuff like that. That's just, they're just going to keep going with it. It's going to keep increasing in popularity. Even though it's popular, I will just tell you guys out there, you shouldn't overpay for it. I mean, we talk about the big ones locally here. If you're trying to buy them on a secondary market, probably get away $60-$70 for a big one. And for a small one, probably, like 40, 45
on secondary?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something that's important to mention nowadays, though, because some people will go to a local liquor store in town and they'll buy one for $60 and think they just got a deal.
No, it's always good to know the secondary price, even MSRP, because when you go into a store for something like this, they might post it for $100, and you're I can get that, you can get that cheaper elsewhere.
And I think we all probably have our fingers on the secondary market pretty good, especially online. And how many times do you hear, I'm new here, is $65 too much to pay for this? As they already have the bottle in their car, I'm like, well, I was going to tell you yes, but you've already bought it. So
I just think it's good to mention because, I hate seeing people overpay for things, but it's just the reality of today's market. People are going to overpay for stuff.
Oh, yeah, definitely will, especially with the Weller name. They hear they got Weller, they're coming in on two wheels into that parking lot, that's for sure. I had a guy at my work, they were using our facilities for something, and so as a thank you, he brought, he wasn't a bourbon guy, and he brought a handle of Weller Special Reserve as a thank you for letting him use our facilities. He's like, I'm not a bourbon guy. He goes, but everybody around me told me this was a pretty good gift. I was like, yeah, that was a really good gift. We appreciate that. Don't worry, that's going to get used.
Before we go, I wanted to thank everyone that had downloaded and reviewed us on the various platforms. It's very humbling to see others were listening to this. So the three of us want to thank you personally. With that, thanks for listening to this week's edition. Please like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at TheMashupKY. Also, let us know your thoughts on this bottle in the comments section. Until next time, keep it neat.